The legendary Ringo Starr is back with both a new album entitled What's My Name and a new book entitled Another Day in the Life, featuring hundreds of photographs and images shot by Ringo and pulled from the Beatles archives.
I mean, the book...
You must have been in heaven talking to him.
I was. Another Day in the Life. It has shots, some extraordinary shots from his time with the Beatles. You know, Ringo always, you can go back to A Hard Day's Night and you see him in that iconic scene going around taking photographs. There also, though, it's very cool, there are a lot of shots of him shooting with his iPhone. And he just talks about, as a guy that's been taking pictures for over 50 years, how remarkable the iPhone camera is. And you see a lot of montages here. But what an incredible book that is. Another Day in the Life, a great Christmas gift for any Beatle fan.
And in one of Joe's favorite interviews ever, he sat down with the legendary Beatle for a wide-ranging discussion. He began the conversation discussing Beatlemania and how his life instantly changed forever back in 1964.
Everything exploded. And especially in America, it was just like you guys, it's like this supernova that exploded. And since then, you know, you can't walk across the street without people stopping you, taking a picture. I remember Paul McCartney talking about it one time, saying he made a decision early on. He went to France, he drove around, he said, okay, do I really want to live this way the rest of my life? And he said he remembered making a conscious decision, just going, yeah, it's worth it. Is there ever a time where you've just said, man, I mean, the price is too high. I wish I would have been, like in the early documentaries, they'd said, oh, you wanted to save enough money, so maybe you'd have a hair salon.
And I'm still being bombarded with that. It's like, you know, you say several things in your life and you pay for it. And that's one of them.
Exactly, the big one.
And we didn't know it would be so big. But, you know, the decision you made, it was that we were bombarded day and night, and very little space. Though John and I went on a holiday, Paul and I went, you know, we all did holidays, and we weren't that recognized then, and so we could have a good time. The pressure did start to hit, and if you look at Ron Howard's documentary on us, you can see it was getting grayer. You know, we're getting gray, and we're like, no.
Suffocating.
It was getting like, it was getting harsh, so we stopped touring. And we did some really good things in the studio. But the other thing we had to say, or I had to say, I can't speak to them, is that I'm going to the movies. I'm going out. We're going to, you know, whatever. And that's how it is.
You do it.
You just got to do it.
Well, yeah, you can't hide. You know, there's always always the stories about the White Album. Being so hard, and times you left, and all the fighting, and that Abbey Road was somehow this wonderful, magical, happy moment. But had to still be tough, right, for you guys?
There was discussions, you know, meaningful discussions. I mean, the White Album, my response was, well, I left the band. I didn't feel I was playing, and everybody knows the story. I went over to John, knocked on his door. He was in an apartment I owned, but with Yoko. And I said, you know, I feel I'm not really playing that great, and you three are so close. And he goes, I thought it was you three. And so I go to Paul, knock, knock, because that's what I'm like. And I said, you know, I'm not playing great, and you three seem so close. He goes, I thought it was you three. So I said, I'm out.
When we came in, I walked past the gallery that had a lot of your pictures. There was a great one of George in a bobby hat. There was another one of George with a camera, but there's this really cool shot of a car full of fans.
Oh, yeah?
That's an awesome picture.
Well,
do you remember where that was?
Yeah, it was when we landed in New York the first time. And I had my camera with me, and these kids had heard we were coming, and they drove to the airport, and then they just sort of followed our car. But anyway, they came right in line with us. And they were, you know, you can see by the picture, they're all like looking at us. And I thought, wow, I had the camera. I used to have the camera all the time then. So that is so great. New York and the kids, you know. So they actually made it happen, because they just came right alongside us. not just following, you know.
But being, a photographer, you've got to see the moment, find the moment, and take the picture.
Well, you've got to, yeah, you've just got to take it.
I actually had Grow Old With Me.
John's version.
Yeah, John's version, because it was such an incredible song.
Yeah.
I thought it was like Jealous Guy or Imagine.
Yeah.
And I always thought it was a shame that more people didn't hear that song. You've come back and...
Yeah, but I've done it out of the blue. I never heard it. I knew nothing about it.
Really?
Really. So I'm hanging out and in this town, and Jack Douglas, who produced John's
the producer, right?
He, I'd bumped into him for several years, but just this year he said, "Well, did you ever get that cassette?" I don't know what you're talking about. And John was doing the Bermuda demos,
which they released in the album after Double Fantasy.
He covered all. He finished all of those. He didn't finish Grow Old Along With Me. But anyway, at the beginning of this, he talks about me. He says, not about that song, just about whatever song was on there. He says, "Oh, that would be good for Richard Starkey. That would be great for Ringo."
Did he really say that?
I held up. He's been gone 39 years. I've got his voice talking my name. It was so emotional. Anyway, all of the others he'd done. Bar this one, and I had no idea about this one. It was like, what? I was shocked. I've never heard about it.
So you had never heard Grow Old With Me until... this year?
This year.
Oh, my God.
And then, as usual, we went on the internet and we found John playing it, and I believe it was George Martin put strings on top of it. And that's the only version, bar some girls singing it. That's all we could find.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Because I think it's one of his best songs. So... When somebody told me a while back that you had redone the verse, I said, "Oh my God, thank God." So can I ask you? I would think you had to feel a burden doing that song, like going, "Man, I want to do this right."
Well,
for
I did
John.
it the best I could. That's how I work, and so I thought I'm going to do it. And I did the backing track and put the drums on and sang it. Grow old along with me. The only bass player I want on this track is Paul. I mean, he's the most incredible bass player. He's my friend. And I did point out to John, I said, "Sure, I'm coming over." And, he's now part of my family. Jill Walsh married Barbara's sister, so he can never say no.
He's got no choice, actually.
I wanted him.
Yeah.
And, it just came together really good. And, there's going to be some flack, but I didn't care. Look, I love John. I love this track. I've done my best version of it.
Yeah. Now, you talked about working with Paul. It's very weird. I was a little too young for the Beatles, but I started listening to music in 71, 72. So I got introduced to you through your solo stuff and through the other Beatles with the solo stuff. And like by 73 or 74, I was like, wait, they were in a group. So Paul playing on this, and you said in the book he's always been very generous. But reminded me of one of my favorite albums, Ringo, the 73 album, where 6 O'Clock, which just an incredible song. It still holds up all these years later. But also the first 45, half the people won't know what that is, but the first 45 I ever bought was your 16.
Oh, wow.
And of course, tell the story about Paul and what people call the kazoo. You remember he did that?
Oh, yeah.
That solo? Yeah.
He just did it with his hand.
That was his big contribution. Right? Yeah. So you guys.
But that was how we were. When there were four of us. I mean, sounds. I've actually played just the boxes for the drums, not even the drum. And we'd play if it was around or I felt it was needed. It was that loose, and so he went into the kazoo. On the track. But that record, I was flashing back on that Ringo album because the band are on it, Dr. John's on it, everybody's on it. But that's like the All-Stars now, or the last 30 years. I love that because I get to play with all these great players and they support me and we go on tour.
Okay. Let's just say you had a great time out in LA. Coming up a little later, part 2 of Joe's conversation with the legendary Ringo Starr on his new book, his new album, and how a potential move to Texas once almost kept the Beatles from ever becoming a band.
But the book, again, Another Day in the Life, really something.
Up next to act. Now for part 2 of Joe's wide-ranging discussion with Ringo Starr for the legendary musician's new album, What's My Name? And great new book, Another Day in the Life. Here, we hear how the Beatles lured Ringo back to the band after he quit during the recording sessions for the White Album, but how his time away inspired one of the group's classic songs.
I was getting telegrams in those days, and you know, come on home, come on back, blah, 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 we love you. And when I got back to Abbey Road again, it was full of flowers that George had arranged.
Oh, wow.
Whole place was flower madness, flower power.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was my moment then. And which is on Abbey Road. We're in Sardinia. Peter Sellers' boat's in Sardinia. And so he lent us his boat. We took the kids, we went out, and we asked for something to eat, and the guy gave us octopus. Octopus? We don't need it. We're from Liverpool. We don't eat octopus.
Right.
Anyway, I was talking to the captain, we're just sailing away. And he said, I said, octopus, man, we like fish. And now we're vegetarian. He was saying, you know what octopus is in the ocean, and they go around picking up all shiny stuff and putting it around their cave. And it just sounded beautiful. They were making this garden, so I'd like to be, because I was a bit deranged. Yeah. And, real weird brain damage at the time. And how beautiful. So I'd like to be under the sea in an octopus's garden, in the shade. And that's how that's up, but that's on the Abbey Road album.
Yeah. One of the fascinating things that I loved reading about was your process of recording at home. And everybody, of course, when Paul did it with his first solo album, it was this big, it's revolutionary. You've actually turned that into a way of life. It's like you say you're right that you don't want to go back into the old traditional studios. You've got Pro Tools, you've got your home, you've got
the dogs.
Talk about how that artistically, how that makes it so much easier for you and so much more enjoyable.
Well, it makes it more enjoyable because it's all, if you look at the credits, they're all my friends. And they're on I have a lot of friends, but they're on a lot on the album. There's like 8 musicians for the whole album. Joe's on 3. Steve Judas is on 4. Dave Stewart, known forever. Yeah. So that's how it works. And so we're comfortable with each other. And I just don't like the big glass separation. There's no separation in my studio, really. And the drums are in the bedroom. It's a little one-room guest house. The drums are in the bedroom, and they sound better than anywhere else I've ever played them.
How do you think it's impacted music that you can record on Pro Tools, you can distribute?
I think it's a natural move that with the process of life, like the computer came out, and the computer's bigger than this room to send the guys to the moon. I mean, there's more power on this. It's like mad. And it's just the way of it. And I think also we have to recognize that the kids, a while back, the garage band kids, they were doing it in the garage, not the bedroom. I've just moved to the guest house. So, it sort of like was a natural move. But I do feel, and I was talking to someone today about this, that that's my last album, 10 tracks album, that's it.
Oh, is it really?
The last one. I want to go in and do like 3 tracks. I think an EP is enough now.
Isn't it funny how it changed?
Yeah.
Because it used to be, until you guys started putting out these extraordinary albums, the record industry was driven by singles. We're kind of getting back to that now because the way people listen, we're now moving back to almost like, an independent label can put out a single. And maybe that makes more sense to do a song or 4 songs.
That's what I'm thinking.
2 other songs I want to talk about really quickly before we get to the book. What's My Name? Don't you think next time you go, it's going to be an anthem? What's my name?
I've done that for the last 15 years on stage while I'm touring. And unbeknownst to me, this is why life keeps unfolding. I'm in the studio working and a friend comes over and he says, did you ever hear the song Colin wrote? Because Colin was in the All-Stars 6 years ago. Yeah. He's back now. And he said, he wrote this song, What's My Name? No idea. Colin never mentioned it. So I called Colin and I said, I hear you've got a song called, What's My Name? Bring it on up and let's have a look at it. And anyway, I believe the story goes that he was searching, because 6 years ago when you put stuff away, he was searching for the words of this song. And anyway, in one drawer, he took everything out, and it was the last thing in the drawer. Anyway, he brought it up, and I just loved it. Because I do that every night. It's like part of the act. And it rocks. It just rocks, and it's fun.
So the first song, Gotta Get Up, Get Down.
Down, yeah. But we can't call it that.
Oh, why's that?
Well, because we didn't know that, of course, Joe and I. We were out to dinner with Jim Keltner and Klaus Vorman was in town. Anyway, it was just one of those dinners, and somebody said, I said, you've got to get up to get down. And it was like, yeah, we have a song, and I'm going into my studio and Joe's coming over. So that's the title. But there's been 3 songs out there called You've Got to Get Up to Get Down.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we didn't know. So Universal sort of said, could we call it You've Got to Get Up?
So that's what it's called now. That's what it's going to be called.
You gotta get up, you gotta get up, you gotta get up to get down.
Let's talk about the book.
The book, yeah.
You didn't want to write a traditional memoir because people have been trying to shovel money at you to write a memoir, but you said they'd only want to hear about from 62 to 70.
That's all they want.
I could have had more of a life. I actually learned something, and I thought I'd read everything about you and everything about the Beatles until I read your book. I had no idea that but for bureaucratic paperwork in England, you would have split and left for Texas, and the Beatles may have never been. Why
Lightning
Texas?
Hopkins, my favorite blues player of all time. I don't know, I just feel lightning. And so I'm sitting in Liverpool, and, I got into country, I got into the blues, got into pop. And I just loved Lightning's style. And so, as you do at 19, you decide to emigrate. We were working in the factory. And we went to the consulate in Liverpool, and they gave us all these forms. And they gave us a list of factories we could apply to for jobs, because we were factory workers. And so anyway, we filled in all the forms, and they were lengthy. And we took them back, and then they said, okay. And they gave us more forms. And we were teenagers, and we just ripped them up. We could not fill any more
Too
forms.
much work.
It was just, that's how you react when you're a teenager.
So another day in life, talk about what are you proudest of with the book, and what do you think people are going to get the most out of in getting the book?
What I'm proudest about, because everything I do that's outside of playing is for the Lotus Foundation, which is our charity. So it all goes to charity. And it's great to put my pictures in it. And I think they'll find, if it's like my painting, if I paint it, it's just a painting. That's how it is. I had to get over the attitude that, it's not quite Rembrandt, because I love Rembrandt. So I had to say, no, it's just what you do. And that's how I paint now. So it released me from that fear. And I take photos of anything. If you look at page whatever, there's just plugs in the wall, but they're faces to me. I think it's flashbacks from Timothy Leary. Thank you, Tim. And, empty plates. I'm in a mood, whatever I left at dinner, I take photos of it. Or then there's suddenly Potato Man with asparagus mouth. Right. And then, this is all on tour. And, I had this huge glass of organic veg before I go on stage. And it's a lot of beetroot in it. I started painting and splashing with beetroot. And I said, wow, this is great. There's a few pictures in the book. So it comes from anywhere. I think one of the fun ones for me is there's a spoon And it's got lights in it. And that was, oh, look at the lights in that. Yeah, I'm going to just show them. You know, you can do it.
Our thanks to Ringo Starr for spending some time with us. Again, the new album is What's My Name, and the new book is Another Day in the Life. And that does it for us this morning.